Quiet on set. Picture is up. All right, roll sound.
Rolling.
Roll cameras.
Cam's rolling.
And 3, 2.
Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome to Hank's Think Tank. It's been a while since I've been in here, but I've been a busy guy, got a lot going on. But I am really, really glad to have this guest in today. Her name is Margie Taylor, and she is a very well-known individual here in Montgomery County. And I'm just going to give you the short bio because I'd be here for about 30 minutes if I went the whole way. So for about 6.5 years, she's been the host of Conroe Culture News, and it's a great podcast. She's had hundreds of guests on. I've been one of them, actually. It was a long time ago. And she covers a lot of different topics. It's a good show. I'm going to put a link in the description. I want you guys to catch it when you can. Also, she's the editor of the Conroe City Lifestyle magazine, which is a great magazine also. It's something that's good to get a hold of if you can. She has been the founder and CEO of Taylorized PR for about 8.5 years. And she's done a lot with that business as well. She's also a political consultant. She's a member of several boards, and she does a lot for the community without asking for a whole lot in return. But that's not why we're here today. We're here today because we want to talk about Joey Lenz. And Joey is Margie's son. He was in the military, and he recently passed. He was also a friend of mine, and I miss him. And I've been wanting to talk about him a little bit, but I haven't had an opportunity to just because I haven't had time, and Margie's been busy as well. So I've been looking forward to this conversation, and it's something we're going to do here live on air. So, guys, Joey was a good dude, and it was a needless death. And what I want to do is I want to get Margie to tell us a little bit more about how he died and what happened. And welcome aboard, Margie. It's good to have you here today.
I'm excited.
Been trying to get you in for a while, so I'm glad to have you here.
You have.
And let's talk about Joey. What happened? I mean, he was in the military. He seemed to be doing well. All the news that I was getting through Facebook and such just all pointed toward good stuff. And then all of a sudden, bam.
Yes, it was 5 years ago, 2017, that he finished boot camp, and we went out there to Fort Jackson in South Carolina, and we drove him to Advanced Individual Training, AIT,
right,
in Virginia. And it was such a good time. My oldest son, Tim, and his wife, Valerie, and my granddaughter, Willa, came, and they met us out there. We were so proud of Joey. And you know what? He was proud of himself, which is really cool. He's kind of a quiet guy, but a lot of fun. And he was deployed to South Korea in 2019 for a few months at Christmas time. And he was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. And I know many of us have heard about Fort Hood. I received notice February 1st that he died. And I had just spoken to him, well, actually through a text, but, which is kind of the same thing with Joey. But I had just texted him at 9:30 on January 31st. And he was happy, and he said, "I love you, Mom. I will talk to you at 03." No, he didn't say he'd talk to me at 0300, thank goodness. He had to be up at 0300 to go to the motor pool. He was a tactical generator mechanic at Fort Hood, and he was known as one of the best that the Army had, a generator mechanic. So he had to be up early, and he goes, "I will talk to you tomorrow." And he gave me a heart thing, and that was the last message I received from my youngest son.
And so when the Army got with you, did they call you? How did
it works, I actually was at a Woodlands Chamber after hour at I can't even think right, Forest Park in the Woodlands off 45, because I kind of needed a break. It was political season, and I had been to all the political things, and I go, tonight I just feel like doing something different. How weird is that?
Been there, done that.
So I was out there talking about another client's services and things when my neighbor from across the street called me and said, "You need to go home." I said, "Well, I'm in the Woodlands. Well, you need to go home. And she wouldn't tell me why. But apparently there were 2 service members from the Army at her front door, and they would not tell her who they were. They said, you cannot tell the mother who you are. And I started thinking about it because my ex-husband called me earlier in the day on February 1st and said, what's going on with Joey? Because apparently the Army's trying to find me and we have moved. And I said, I have no idea. I just talked to him and he's fine. Well, when this gal, my neighbor, was telling me there's people at my house, all of a sudden I asked her, I said, are they from the Army? And she said, yes, and you need to come home. There's no explanation needed. When you have somebody come to your house from the Army or other military unannounced, there's only one reason they're at your house.
Wow.
So I threw what I had in my hand down, immediately left. And of course, this is during traffic time, like 6 o'clock or something. And I'm trying to make my way towards Willis on I-45, and dodging the cars.
And at that point, you already knew.
I already knew. And I called my oldest son, and he was crying on the phone, said, Mom, Joey's dead. So I called my pastor, and I said, you need to meet me at my house. So Tim, my oldest son Timmy, and his wife Valerie met us at the house. The pastor was there later. And I actually texted Congressman Brady. And I said, I need to talk to you. Something's not right. I had that mother's instinct knowing something's not right. So these service members that from the military were there, as was their role, to tell the mother, and they had been waiting in my living room for a period of time. They weren't allowed to talk to my husband. They weren't allowed to say anything. But you know. And I said, what happened to my son? They said, we have no idea. He died in his sleep. That's all they said.
Wow.
So what did I do? I made them leave. My husband said I was being rude. I said, I don't really care. You know, I'm not trying to offend them. You know, they give you the whole line, the Secretary of the Army wants to wish condolences. I said, Secretary of the Army doesn't know me, doesn't know my son, and thank you very much, but that's not the answers I need. And I made them leave.
So all they told you is that he died in his sleep.
That's
correct.
It. That is correct. That is correct.
Wow.
And that's all I knew for months. Months. So when your child dies, it is devastating. It is the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, you're not supposed to outlive your kids.
But if you don't even know why, can you imagine?
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yes, it's still a nightmare. And the last time I saw my son, Joey, was Christmas Day. Christmas Day last year. And we celebrated Christmas at my oldest son, Timmy's house in Houston. And he went back to Fort Hood. And I mean, I talked to him on the phone. I texted him quite a bit, like I mentioned, January 31st. But it was the last time I saw him. So it's horrible. I can't even tell you anything else. But I can tell you any information I have gotten has been my own pushing as a mama who will not stop.
Right. So what'd you do next? I mean, the military guys leave. They give you limited information. What's
the very next
move?
day, so they assign you what's called a casualty assistance officer.
Okay.
And Tim had one, and I had one. And both guys came to our house and met us the next day, that Wednesday morning, and were saying, well, you know, we don't know when you'll get him back, and it might be a couple of weeks. And mind you, it was in 20-degree weather. So apparently Joey was transferred to San Antonio, military base there, for autopsy, toxicology. And I said, that ain't going to happen. You're going to bring him home. You're going to bring him home to his mama. And I was pretty insistent. And Tim says, you're going to bring him home to his mama. So he did come back. They were concerned about the weather because it was 20 degrees and less out I-10 and when they could bring him home. And it was pretty icy on that Saturday when he came home.
Right.
And so, ironically, they brought him to Forest Park, the Woodlands, where I was when I got the news.
Wow.
And that's where he's buried today, off I-45. And it's a beautiful place. Lots of trees. Deer roam freely there. And Joey was an animal lover, and it was the right place for him to be.
But they did have an opportunity to do an autopsy and a toxicology report, right?
They did. I did not get that till 4.5 months in, which is atrocious. And that was not until I went to the media.
Right.
The media.
The government moves slow anyway, so I don't know if it was the media thing or not.
That actually was not normal.
Yeah.
And still, that was not conclusive. It was full of narratives that were false. And getting it talked to kratom that killed him, a substance you can drink, which is not true.
Kratom? I've never heard of that. What is
Kratom. It's an African derivative. And Joey had a lot of anxiety, and I knew that, but I didn't know to what extent.
Is kratom like a street drug or something?
No, it's legal. You can get it at the gas station, the convenience store.
Really? I've never heard of it.
But apparently it's illegal on military bases, well, at least in the Army. I don't know why. So they were saying that's what killed him. And then they said, oh, by the way, yeah, he was on a couple of prescribed medications as well. And they said, oh, and he also had an issue with his heart. And I can't remember the term of what it was called. But
now, he was a young man. How old?
He was 32 years old, but he
Yeah.
acted like he was 25.
Right.
He was very young.
Yeah.
He was very playful.
Right.
Nobody would guess he was 32. And he hung out with different officers because sometimes he just needed somebody that was a little more grown up.
So did he have a history of heart disease?
No.
Any heart disease
No.
in the family?
No, none of that. No.
Okay.
He wasn't aware he had any issues. So this has been quite a journey. And I didn't really think about any of that until I sent the autopsy, toxicology, the narrative, as referred by our DA, Brett Ligon, and a friend of mine with Eichenhorst Funeral Homes. They said to use this guy who was a past medical examiner. He actually lives in Kingwood, but he was the medical examiner for Galveston. So I sent it to him, and I followed up with him a couple days later. He goes, they call it drug interaction intoxication. He goes, but I'm going to tell you, he died of a heart attack. He goes, you realize his heart was 3 times the normal size? I said, well, I don't know. Size doesn't mean anything to me because I don't know anything about organ size and what's normal. And he goes, yes. He goes, that's what you need to find out because that didn't happen overnight. That was over a period of time.
Well, you said he was on some prescription medication. So did he have any physical problems, Joey?
Joey had anxiety. No, he didn't have any physical problems.
Okay.
So what I have also come to find out, so when I went out there to the memorial service they had at Fort Hood on February 24th, which was a Thursday, and it had his entire company, and it's a very sobering memorial service because it has his boots and his dog tags and all of that. Afterwards, his staff sergeant said, you need to see Joey's room. You need to see where it was, where he died. She goes, you need to see this. So she took me there. And then she said, you need to go to the motor pool because there's like 30 different soldiers there waiting to talk to you. So they had me go in there, and it was cold. It was very cold that day. They almost closed the whole installation because there was a little bit of snow and ice. And anyway, I mean, we're all in big coats. So they talked to me for 3 hours. They missed their dinner talking to me. They said they needed to talk to the mom of Joey. And they told me stories of how he always brought people joy. He would work a double or a triple for somebody that needed to see their family or just needed time off for whatever reason. Joey was that guy.
I remember him being a good dude.
He's a good dude. And they loved to have him around because even though he was depressed, which I knew he was a little depressed, but I didn't know to the extent of it, he always gave somebody his smile. He just made them feel good about themselves. And that just brings me joy to know that. For other people to know what I already knew,
Right.
And they said, but then they switched the narrative and said, but you need to get justice for Joey. And I didn't know what that meant because this was still early in. This was February 24th. And I hadn't had the autopsy. I didn't have toxicology.
So
I didn't even know why he died.
Right. But what were you you had to have an idea. What were you thinking at that point?
Well, my intuition back when I was told he died, that there was something wrong, that he was over-medicated. Because he was over-medicated once before. Actually, March 17th, 2021, I got a call. I was driving home from Conroe, and a medic at Fort Hood called and wanted to do an emergency MRI on Joey. And I said, absolutely, if you need to do it, of course. And I said, but why? And he said, well, we think Joey has brain damage. I said, why would you think that? They go, well, he's unconscious, and he fell to the ground, and we're very concerned, and he can't speak for himself, and you're the mother and next of kin. Remember, I just said that because I'm going to come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
So I said, absolutely. And I said, but please call me back and let me know what the outcome is. And he goes, absolutely. Well, that never happened. So, of course, I'm worrying. And this was in March 2021. So I'm calling one number and calling another number, calling the military police, calling another number, another. This went on for at least 6 hours. And I was frantic. And I couldn't get a hold of him. I go, why is one of the largest Army bases in the country not able to pick up the phone? How come it says they're out of service? What does that even mean?
Right.
Something's not right. Well, one number led to another number, and I finally found him. And he was in ICU at Darnell Hospital because the ICU nurse told me he was there, and she said he's resting comfortably, and he's been over-medicated. So what happened is he went to the clinic on base for an eye infection that day, and they gave him a cocktail of 4 medications that, for whatever reason, and I don't know why, either it didn't work with his chemistry. I don't know the answer. It was too much. I don't know the answer yet. But he ended up unconscious and in ICU and on all kinds of equipment. So I said, let him sleep and call him in the morning. I called him in the morning. He had no idea why he was there or what happened. And he says, Mom, I'm scared. I don't know what's going on. So he sent me that paperwork that shows that he was on medications. But they tried to change the records on that as well. Yes, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is.
So anyhow, when I found out he had died, I thought, I knew he was on some prescription. I didn't know the extent of the prescriptions. I didn't find out that he was on 9 until I finally got the medical records. They told me 4.
And what kind of medications were they?
Anti-anxiety.
9 anti-anxiety?
Well, there was various ones, but there was like 4 that were anti-anxiety, and they didn't mix together well. They didn't interact well. They call what's called our serotonin syndrome. They cause enlarged hearts. So we're at the end product, but how did we get there? You know, it's interesting. So I think 4 months in, the lieutenant colonel told me he's on 4 medications, and these are the 4. Well, those 4 didn't even mix well together. And I had been trying to get his medical records for many months. And then they were saying I wasn't the mother and next of kin, that I needed to go to County Court of Law, to Claudia Laird's court to prove that I was the mother and next of kin. I'm like, this doesn't even make sense.
Right.
You don't give the autopsy and toxicology to random people. You don't give his final paycheck to random people. I mean, his brothers didn't get it. He had 2 brothers, one that lives in LaPorte, and Tim now lives in Tacoma, Washington. They didn't get these reports because I was the mother and next of kin, and his father got it too. But they wouldn't let me have the medical records. So
they didn't want to release them. That's what
correct.
It was.
I know that.
Yeah.
Yes, I know that. And I worked through it. So Congressman Brady, he's been working with me and his chief of staff, Dave Davis, since day one, since I first got the notice. So Kevin Brady did call me on, February 2nd, which was the first full day after Joey died. And he said, I'm going to have my chief of staff, Dave Davis in D.C., who's also been in the Army. He's been I believe he was a lieutenant colonel in the Army. He said he knows the people. He says, I'm going to help. He's going to work with you. Well, he has. So I finally got the medical records. Oh, gosh. I think the beginning of August. And that was only because, and they kept saying I had to prove and have a judge affirm that I was the mother next to kin. I'm like, this is the most ridiculous thing. And so he called up
It's a
there.
hassle, but it probably wasn't very hard to do, I would imagine.
Well, so Mr. Davis called up at Fort Hood every day for a week saying, you can't do this because in Texas, if somebody dies without a will and they're not married and they don't have children, the next of kin is their parents.
Right.
End of story. So that's what finally got the deed done.
Okay.
And I received it. So it was 541 pages. I went through every page, and anything that looked a little weird that says this is abnormal or that, I took that aside, made a copy of it, Googled a little of it, sent it to my attorney. And so he has that in his records. So there were a lot of discoveries I made on that, because I looked at it with a different eye. So Joey died of an enlarged heart, and this happened beforehand. So what I found out that he was actually on 9 medications in January. In January, he was on 9 medications when he got back from Christmas, and he died February 1st. 9.
Right.
There was no lab work. The only lab work he ever had done was when he was in ICU. That lab work in the medical records, from what they gave me, and there's a lot redacted, and I don't even have the full set yet. I don't even know why he was on the 9.
Okay, what redacted? Why would they redact medical records? I mean, the military usually redacts things that are a matter of national security.
No, that's not true. There's so much that people don't know.
So why would they redact medical records?
Well, of course they do names, but then they do doctors, and they redact a lot of stuff, and we're still waiting on the full report. So even though I have 541 pages, it's not the full medical records.
So if they're redacting doctors' names, the only reason why they would be doing that, in my mind,
Accountability,
of course, because of negligence.
Of course, I know that.
Okay, wow.
Yes. There's a lot people don't know. So that was the only lab work done, and there were indications in that lab work that there was a heart issue, that he possibly had a heart attack. It said
prior to all this, or
prior to him dying.
Attack.
This is a year
Okay.
prior. This is a year prior.
Okay.
This is March 2021.
So they think he had a heart attack then.
There were indications there was heart issues in the lab work.
Wow.
And again, I'm not a medical expert. I don't know what troponin is, TROPIN, or what exactly that is. But there were also indications that he was extremely anemic, and it said that there were other things wrong with his blood, extremely low, extremely high, and there was no follow-up ever.
Yeah,
and this was not told to Joey, too.
And I do know that anxiety medicines will do that as well.
Correct.
Yeah, they'll rob you of iron and things like that. And
Well,
make you
and
anemic.
so I also found out when I went to that memorial service at Fort Hood, February 24th, that Joey was in a toxic environment. I did not know that. He was in an extremely toxic environment.
I'm sorry, but I would think the military is a toxic environment. It just seems like it would be.
Interestingly enough, we want people to be tough. We want them to be prepared for war.
Absolutely.
And yes, you hear the stories of people getting yelled at during boot camp. Joey loved boot camp. He loved it. He thrived in that. And he thrived in all the boundaries of the Army. He needed that. He was excelling. He was a specialist, but during COVID, you didn't have to go in front of people. You could be on a screen. So he was getting ready to, I don't want to say try out, whatever it is, rank up to sergeant.
Okay.
And then they went back to in person. You got to say this and do a whole speech thing. And he says, no, I'm not doing that, because he didn't have that confidence. But the Army did give him more confidence than he ever had, and he felt good about himself. He received a lot of different medals and honors and things like that, and we were proud of him. Joey had a lot of friends. He always said he didn't have a lot of friends, but he had 54 soldiers that came on their own expense, the 3 hours back and forth, plus the time they spent at the memorial service in Conroe, and 100 wanted to come. But it was a toxic commanding officer. He would not allow them to come. And he was the guy that the soldiers told me was extremely toxic to Joey. Very toxic. And Joey started getting a lot of depression. That's why he took the kratom, too. It was a supplement. And he drank. I mean, they all drink.
Well, I mean that's,
not all of them, but of course. And Joey knew he had a drinking problem. He knew that a long time, and he was getting counseling for that. He never got any mental health counseling because he was afraid, because there's retribution if you do that. So other soldiers told me that day on February 24th, several of them, that they were concerned for Joey. And I needed to get justice because he was in the toxic environment. And they went to the commanding officer and said, hey, we're concerned about Joey. And what happened is he got on more drugs. They gave him more drugs. And, of course, they drug tested him, but he wasn't on anything illicit.
Right.
So they just pounded in more drugs.
Do you think they did that just to try to shut him up? You know, just to keep him from, if he was in a toxic environment.
He wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to say anything at all. And they were actually chaptering him out of the Army on an alcohol charge that wasn't substantial. Mm-hmm. And there was no proof. But Joey would have been alive nonetheless. Joey would have been out of the Army in March.
Wow.
And he re-enlisted. He loved the Army. Mm-hmm. He was going to be career. But
Sure.
instead of fighting it, he was ready to get out because he was tired of the toxic environment he was in. So, lots of things learned. I also,
I have a question,
Yes.
and I don't know. When you're in the military and they prescribe medications for you, do you take those medications, or do you have to go to a dispensary and get them throughout the day or whenever it's time to take them?
No, you take them. You take them home with
just,
you.
Okay, you just do it like you
Yes.
would
Yes.
normally. Okay.
Yes, and he
Okay.
does have people that were watching out for him, and more soldiers are coming forward now to tell me things. Mm-hmm. And I'm putting together those pieces because anybody who mentions my name or Joey's at Fort Hood, or for that matter, in any part of Big Army, as they call it, will face retribution. There is a gag order. Why?
Well, there's something going on at Fort Hood
You wonder
anyway.
why that is, but it's true.
Yeah.
So Joey's best buddy, who he worked with side by side as a generator mechanic, and he also was deployed to South Korea with this gentleman out in 2019. He is now in New York, and he is ready to talk. Others are ready to talk. Most of his company is out in Poland right now, and some of them have reached out to me. They're over it. So what I do know, since I went to TikTok, and I have some that have hit 1.4 million views, 300,000 and different things like that, is that there's a lot of this that goes on across all branches of the military.
So it's not just Fort Hood. It's pretty much everywhere?
It's all over. It's all over. Things about the pills, the toxic environments. I mean, you hear about the sexual harassment, but it goes beyond that. When that's bad. That is absolutely bad. But what's even worse is the individuals are not a priority. Their mission, the weapon, equipment are priorities over the person. And I also saw that when they do physicals, because they all are required to have an annual physical, all branches of the military, but it's a self-report check-in. If I say, Hank, how are you doing? You say, fine, and we click off you had a physical.
Really?
That's it.
Wow.
That's it.
Yeah.
If you say you've been wheezing a little, oh, that's bad. Or if you say anything, or you've had headaches, that's bad. You won't be deployed. You won't rank up. You won't see your family. You face retribution. Why is this
retribution
okay?
over medical issues? That's odd.
Why do we do that? Why do we do that to the less than 1% that enlists to serve our country? They volunteer to serve our country willingly. And why is their physical health less important than, say, prisoners?
I don't know. That's unusual. And
But I bet we don't even know that. I bet most people don't realize that.
I didn't know it.
I mean, you think that they get annual physicals. I mean, we all hear that. I always heard that. But it isn't an annual physical. There is no physical. So if you were getting an annual physical, your doctor doesn't say, oh, I'm just going to check it off that you say you're fine. They give you the damn physical, right? So you give a physical, and maybe there's an EKG done that takes a few minutes. It's not that big a deal. You know, it's not even that costly because they already have the equipment.
Chest X-ray,
it's
blood
not.
work.
Yeah,
Right.
blood work. Blood work is not that expensive. Just do blood work.
Right.
So Joey never had that. The only lab work or physical he had was when he was in ICU because he was over medicated. I didn't know that. I didn't know he was a toxic environment. So this has just opened up doors. I also found out that when he was put on the 9 medications, there was no lab work. Why is that okay? So Joey's death was preventable on so many different levels.
So when they gave him the 9 medications, that was after he had been in ICU.
Yes, this was
So, and he
January
was
of
in
this
IC
year.
And he was in ICU for being over-medicated.
Correct.
So they prescribed him more. Obviously.
Yes, they gave him an immunization that didn't mix, and I have no idea why. To their defense, why they gave him that medication, I don't know if it was the dosage. I don't know if it mixed with something. I have no idea. All I know is it was over medicated to him and his response to his body. Because the nurse told me that. I mean, one would think the ICU nurse would know what she's talking about, and they just act like it never happened. And we were going to do a congressional investigation on that. And Joey did not want to be reprimanded. He didn't want to be center of attention. He goes, "You can't do that, Mom. Don't do that. I have to still be here at Fort Hood.
Yeah, still got to work here, still got to be around these people."
You know, I guess it's kind of like if your wife were to call up and say, "I'm going to call up where Hank's working and tell them what she needs to
Right.
stay in her lane," right? So I'm like, okay, you're 31 years old. I'll do that. But it didn't feel right to me. But I'm like, okay, fine. I should have done it. I should have been that mom who did that. He might be still alive. But I didn't know he was in this horrible condition either of just the way he was treated all the time. But yet he was still respectful. He still respected his chain of command and the commander. Everybody said that. He was always respectful, even though he was in a toxic environment.
Right. Well, that's terrible.
It is terrible. It's all terrible.
So what are the movements now? What are we doing now?
So I can't bring back Joey.
Yeah,
I
that's
talked
not-
to Joey.
Unfortunately,
I pray
that's not going to happen.
for him, but he's in line with what I'm doing. I know this, and if you haven't lost a child, you don't know what I'm talking about, or somebody you love. Sometimes you get signs from people you love. Whether
Sure.
it's your dad or someone, different signs. If
Right.
you've listened for them, and I'm not crazy, I see signs and I have indications that he wants me to move forward and save lives. So even if I save a couple, then I have accomplished what I'm doing. What I'm doing now may save somebody's life. It's the little things, and it's going to build up. So what I want to do is change legislation with the Department of Defense.
Okay.
I want physicals to be physicals. I want that to really happen. I want lab work when you get pharmaceuticals. You should have that. If you have more than a designated number, you should have lab work before you have refills. I mean, in civilian lab, isn't that kind of like doctor shopping or whatever when you do that?
I take a statin, and that's just for cholesterol, and I think every 90 days or something.
Whatever, they're supposed to check
it's
on you.
mandated. Yeah, you have to.
I mean,
that's or you won't
it's
get your
professional,
prescription.
right? I mean, one would think they take the oath to serve and do the right thing.
Right.
So I'm also finding out that many of the military so-called physicians are not credentialed. Why is that okay?
Really?
Oh, yes. Because I am in line with other parents. Unfortunately, they found me, I guess. It's called Save Our Service Members, saveourservicemembers.org. They're across all branches, and they have lost a child through negligence or medical malpractice with the military, Coast Guard,
And
Navy,
there's a lot.
Marines. There's a lot.
Wow.
There's a lot. Somebody had a staph infection or the flu, and they were told to suck it up, and they ended up dying. This happens a lot. Young people, 20 years old, 21, 19.
Wow.
Yes. So I also get notices. I'm a Gold Star mom, and I never even know what a Gold Star mom was until this year. How crazy is that? I just kind of went around my life and did my thing and figured everybody was okay. So Gold Star mom is someone, a parent who lost a child actively serving in the military.
Okay.
So I have my Gold Star pin on, and I have my other Gold Star flag on. I have Gold Star plates that say Joey L., and I wear it proudly because I wear this for my son and other parents that have lost their child. I'm also part of Blue Star Mothers, which is anybody who's actively serving or a veteran, a mother, stepmother, foster mother, and they have associate members. Anybody can be associate member that wants to help. And they're actually having a packing party out in Conroe. They do this 4 times a year over at Honor Cafe, the military cafe. And then they send packages to those deployed. So I'm
Okay.
part of that group. So I get a notice from the National Blue Star Mothers Organization when there are non-combat deaths. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot. One day there were 4 across bases
In one day.
in one day. So
Wow.
why is this happening? Why isn't anybody questioning what is going on? Well, because it's so hard to find out. It's a struggle. Everything I've done has been a learning experience for me of how much a struggle it is to get information from the military. That's correct too. So every bit of information I have isn't all correct. It is really not. It is what they want you to know. That's not okay.
That's
not okay.
That doesn't sit well with me for some reason.
No.
And
But that's what's happening.
I still can't understand why they would even redact part of his medical records. It doesn't make sense.
I don't know. But I'm one person fighting the Army for answers for her child.
And so, do you have any litigation against the Army at this point? Or?
So we have filed a claim against the JAG office, is the
Okay.
correct terminology of that, for $32 million.
Okay.
I don't expect a dollar, but it's because I mean business. I want to escalate this. I want things changed. I want accountability. I want them to say, yes, we did mess up. Yes, we should not have given him prescriptions. Admit it. I mean, he didn't get those
Right.
by himself.
At least not
Come on.
9. Yeah.
And he had a heart issue that they identified. I didn't know about it. He didn't know anything about it. Why didn't he even know about it? Why is that okay? And who else are they hurting by not disclosing information? And why aren't they taking lab tests? This is wrong. So, when you're in the military, all of your records stay in one place. It's very easy, if you're a physician, to pull up to see what your patient is on. It's not like in civilian life where you can go wherever you want,
Right.
and it's up to you, dependent on you, to tell the next doctor what you're on or any of that, which is very important to, tell each
Right.
physician what medications you're on so that they interact well, because some obviously don't. So there's really no excuse for it. And as far as I'm concerned, this is negligent homicide. It wasn't an accident.
Right.
I'm going to call it what it is. And yeah, I'm all about updating protocols to keep our military safe. So
Okay.
I'm that person who's going to keep pushing until I can see a change happen with the Department of Defense.
And so at this point, you're in the process of trying to write some legislation as well, right?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
And what does that legislation cover, or what do you think it'll cover once it's all done?
Mandatory physicals that include tests done that are real physicals that you could see in your medical records. It's just the same
That doesn't
stuff.
seem like it's asking a lot.
I don't think it is. I think it's a nonpartisan issue, to be quite honest with you.
Should be
Why wouldn't
nonpartisan.
we want our military to be kept safe? If they're protecting us and our country and are volunteering to do this, I mean, yes, they get paid. I'm not saying they don't get paid for it, but they're enlisting to serve our country. Nobody's making them. We don't have a mandatory,
Right. There's no draft in place.
draft in place. We haven't had that for a long, long time.
Been a while.
It's been a while, and we need people. We need people to do this, both men and women, both, to do this. And we need to protect them. We need to make sure that they're safe too, because they are going out there with their weapons and taking care of us, or whatever their role is, whatever their job. They're a part of the whole unit, and they all work as a team together.
Right.
But if you have a couple with significant roles that are impaired mentally or physically, that's not okay. And they also have no mental resources available. Are you
And
aware of that?
You would think the Army would be the one place where they'd have excellent mental resources. You would need it. I mean, it just seems
One would
so
think.
logical
I
to
know.
me.
I mean, that's the problem, is that we take it for granted that everything is okay because this is our military.
Right.
I mean,
Best military in the world.
There's things we don't know. I mean, did you know that they have to pay for their food? They have to buy their own bedding. That I did not know when Joey first went to Fort Hood, because that was his basic place where he only was deployed one time in 2019. But other than that, he was at Fort Hood. He was sleeping without a blanket, a pillow, or anything because he didn't have the money, because they don't pay him that much, to buy his own. He was using his clothing as blankets or
Wow.
a pillow. I bet we didn't know that. No,
That doesn't make sense.
it's true.
Wow.
I know. Wow.
Okay, so I got another question for you.
Okay.
If I'm a mother of a military individual who's passed, is there like a consortium of individuals, a place where I can go and get more information? Is there a place you went to where you gathered any information, a website or something like
Nope.
that?
I just hustled. I harassed people.
We have a great contact network.
I went to the media, and it wasn't until I went to the local Colleen publication that I got the criminal investigation report, and I got autopsy and toxicology. Even if it wasn't correct, at least I got something, and was able to then take it to the next level, because they kept telling me it wasn't ready. So it wasn't until that Colleen publication went to the criminal investigation department, CID, and said, hey, I'm helping this mom out. I'm getting this story out. Here's your deadline. And within 45 minutes, close to their deadline, they called me. Oh, we finished our report.
Wow.
Yes. So I went to the media because, I work in PR. I know how to do that. I know how to elevate that. I work through my congressman. And hopefully I know I will be working through Morgan Luttrell to help make changes to save our military. So where did I go besides that? So I suddenly got picked up. I did go to TikTok, and that gave me a lot of resources, and people were telling me, you need to talk to this person, you need to talk to this person, and I talked to a lot of people. And then Save Our Service Members is an organization. SaveOurServiceMembers.org is a collaboration of parents that have lost a child serving in the military across all branches, and they are working to change what's known as the FERES doctrine, F-E-R-E-S doctrine.
Okay.
It is 70 plus years old, and a lot of people aren't familiar with it.
I'm not. What is it?
And what it is, it's a amendment saying that the military is not accountable for military malpractice or negligence.
Really?
True.
Doesn't surprise me.
It's antiquated. So there has been some revisions. The Richard Stayskull Act of 2020 amends it some, and we're working on other changes. So as a group, we can make change. And that's what I want. I want a group of people to say, this is enough. We need to take care of our military. I love the military. I think they do an outstanding job. I'm part of the Montgomery County Veterans Memorial Commission. It's not that I am against any part of the military. I want to keep our military safe. Now that I know more information, I want to pursue changing legislation to keep them safe, update our medical protocols. I'm an advocate. So I went out there to D.C. in June with this group of people, and we talked to senators and congressmen. Okay. And we're making a difference collectively in a peaceful manner. We're not rioting. We're not throwing things. We're explaining things. I had an hour with Ted Cruz, and I said, were you aware that this was going on? And he said, I had no idea. I said, either we do something now, or you're going to need a bigger room for all the parents that are here.
Right.
Because it's going to keep happening until something changes. So I'm going out again, hopefully in February, and going with Save Our Service Members organization. And there are more parents now involved, unfortunately. Yeah. And it keeps happening. So they need to hear us on what we need to do. And it's simple stuff. We're not asking big changes. Spend a lot of money, look over the FERES doctrine. That's not right. Mm-hmm. We need to keep our military safe. That's pretty much it.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
And I'm working on a Gold Star Mothers group. I am part of the national organization, American Gold Star Mothers. And like I mentioned, there is a Blue Star Mothers national organization as well that was formed through Congress many years ago and is affiliated in D.C. And I am starting an organization out here in Montgomery County. I know of 7 moms and families, and I know that we're building a Gold Star monument at the Veterans Memorial Park as well.
Okay. That's 7 too many.
It is.
Well, Margie, it was great having you in today. And I think you're doing a good thing. And I think if you continue to pursue it, you will see some changes. And it'll make, like you said, it's not going to bring Joey back, but at least it'll make his death means something.
Joey's bill. Watch for Joey's bill. It's going to happen.
Okay, we'll be looking for it. So, guys, if you have people in the military, you need to get with them, make sure they're okay, and ask them about their medical situation and if they've had, checkups and things like that. And let's see if maybe we can help Margie along in the way. And, numbers speak volumes. So you get more people behind it, and it's something that we can all get involved in and do, and it's important. They take care of us. We need to do the same thing and reciprocate that and make sure we take care of them. I'm Hank Vatt. This is Hank's Think Tank, and we'll see you in the next one.
Okay.